Coming up today, South Korea will send a maintenance crew to North Korea ahead of next month's reunions for war-separated families to make sure the venue is ready. EU leaders agree to give more than $1 billion to aid agencies helping refugees in camps near war-torn Syria. Plus, the CEO of Volkswagen steps down after the company revealed millions of its cars have software designed to trick emissions tests. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 24th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm Mark Broome. We start with news that South Korea is expediting preparations for a round of inter-Korean family reunions slated for next month. Seoul's Unification Ministry says it has sent some 40 workers to the venue to do repairs, maintenance and other necessary preparations. They will return on Friday, but another 60 people will either commute or stay at the venue in Mount Gumgang after the Chuseok holiday, with the goal of finishing the work before the family reunion scheduled between the 20th and the 26th of October. Now, Seoul and Pyongyang have already exchanged lists of candidates for the reunions, but the reunion plan continues to be jeopardized by threats from North Korea to carry out a rocket launch or even a nuclear test. However, no signs yet of a possible rocket launch in North Korea. Despite those widespread speculation, the regime is preparing to conduct a launch next month to mark a key anniversary. A senior South Korean government official said Thursday that there hasn't been any activity to suggest a launch at the North's Dongchang-ri missile launch site, including any increase in facility or personnel movement. He did say, however, that a cover has been installed over the launch pad and the area around the launch site has been cleared, which could potentially be used to hide preparations. Now, officials say if North Korea was to conduct a launch to coincide with the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party on October 10th, they would expect the North to transfer the rocket to the launch site by the end of this month. Now, the South Korean Army plans to establish a covert operations unit. It'll be tasked with targeting North Korea's key military facilities in an emergency situation or if a war broke out. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's Army Special Forces train day and night to ensure they are always ready for the worst-case scenario. If called upon in a real-life situation, the most elite branch in the South Korean Army can target key military targets in North Korea, with a range of tactics, including assassinations and missions aimed at confusing the enemy. Now, South Korea's Special Warfare Command is planning to establish a covert unit that will specialize in taking out key North Korean military facilities, including nuclear and ballistic missile sites, if necessary.
We will be able to conduct operations in North Korea. We can carry out operations independently, but we would need support from the U.S.
One of the 6 brigades under the Special Warfare Command will be turned into a covert operations unit. The unit will conduct independent training operations and will have the necessary air support for its missions. Osprey transport helicopters and attack AC-130 gunships are expected to support the special forces during their missions. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The American aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan will be in the southern port city of Busan next month to help Korea celebrate a couple of anniversaries. A South Korean military official said Thursday that the ship will participate in an event on October 18th commemorating both the 70th anniversary of the Korean Navy and Korea's independence from Japanese colonial rule. The official added that the fleet's deployment and the inclusion of the nuclear-powered carrier sends the message that Seoul and Washington will not ignore provocations from North Korea. The USS Ronald Reagan replaces its predecessor, the USS George Washington, as the American flagship in the Asia-Pacific region. President Park Geunhye will be in New York this weekend for 2 key UN events. She will offer congratulatory remarks on the organization's 70th anniversary and deliver South Korea's stance on a slate of major issues up for discussion. Kwon Soo-ah reports.
First on President Park's agenda is the UN Sustainable Development Summit, after which she will address the 70th session of the UN General Assembly. She will give a keynote speech at the summit on Saturday, where participants will be adopting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. She will also attend a special high-level forum on South Korea's rural community development program, the Saemaul movement.
By explaining the global version of the Saemaul movement, we anticipate the program will develop into one of international dimensions.
At the General Assembly on Monday, President Park's second since taking office, she will offer congratulatory remarks on the UN's 70th anniversary, as well as offering a review of the organization's achievements and her recommendations for its future. She is also expected to outline Korea's diplomatic policy goals and reaffirm Korea's desire to contribute to key global issues, including peace and security and climate change. President Park is also expected to emphasize the need for peace and security on the Korean peninsula and the denuclearization of North Korea as part of plans for a peaceful reunification. She will also likely discuss the need to keep Pyongyang from firing a long-range rocket next month, following a recent indication from the north. During a 4-day trip, President Park is slated to meet with UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon and hold summits with her Pakistani and Danish counterparts in a bid to diversify Korea's economic ties. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has made clear that China is open to foreign business and has vowed to remove barriers to foreign investment and improve intellectual property protections. Addressing a group of America's top business leaders, including Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett and Apple's Tim Cook, he emphasized that there can be no progress in the Chinese economy without reform. President Xi then toured a Boeing factory and visited the Microsoft headquarters. He will visit Washington, D.C. on Thursday, where he'll be the guest of honor at a banquet hosted by U.S. President Barack Obama. Pope Francis is in the United States this week, and on Wednesday he spoke to more than 15,000 people on the series of pressing issues facing the USA. Our Oh Soo-young has this report.
Addressing a crowd of thousands at the White House on Wednesday, the Pope called for urgent action on tackling climate change, saying it can no longer be left to a future generation. He said there had to be a serious and responsible recognition of the conditions facing the world's children. He also called on the US to protect religious liberties, saying it was one of America's most precious possessions. The Pope also encouraged the nation to build an inclusive society by welcoming immigrants. After his address, officials say Pope Francis held private talks with President Obama for about 40 minutes. Later in the day, at the Cathedral of St. Matthew in Washington, the pontiff touched upon the controversial sexual scandal involving members of the Catholic Church.
I know how much the pain of recent years has weighed upon you, and I have supported your generous commitment to bring healing to victims, and to work to ensure that such crimes will never be repeated.
The Pope may meet with victims of sexual abuse over the next few days. The Vatican, however, says it will announce the meetings after they are held to protect the victims' privacy. This is the first time in 7 years that a papal visit has been made to the US. For the rest of his trip, the Holy Father will tour various landmarks in New York City and Philadelphia. He will make the first ever papal speech to the US Congress on Thursday, followed by another speech at the UN General Assembly on Friday. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
EU leaders have agreed to offer fresh aid for Syrian refugees and step up external border controls as well. This as the influx of migrants continues, with many calling it Europe's worst refugee crisis since World War II. Kim Min-ji reports.
Another 1 billion euros, or roughly $1.1 billion will be set aside to help UN agencies support Syrian refugees. The decision came after a 7-hour summit of European Union leaders in Brussels as they discuss ways to curb the influx of migrants that hit record highs this summer. The financial support is aimed at extending help to Lebanon, Jordan and Turkey, from where millions of Syrians have fled since 2011. The leaders also agreed to strengthen the EU's borders.
It is clear that the greatest tide of refugees and migrants is yet to come. Therefore, we need to correct the policy of open doors and windows. Now the focus should be on the proper protection of our external borders and on external assistance to refugees and the countries in our neighborhood.
To achieve this, they agreed to set up hotspots to register and fingerprint new migrants in border countries such as Italy and Greece. They will also begin the process of relocating Syrians and others who need protection to other EU nations and sending back people regarded as economic migrants. About 500,000 migrants have arrived in Europe this year, and many EU countries have been reluctant about a plan to relocate 120,000 migrants who are already in the EU. A day earlier, a group of EU interior ministers agreed to allocate the migrants across 28 states based on a quota system, despite fierce opposition from 4 Eastern European countries, including Hungary and Slovakia. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the enormous corporate scandal engulfing Volkswagen. He hung around for a couple of days, but the company's CEO finally resigned on Wednesday following revelations Volkswagen had fitted millions of its vehicles with software to cheat emissions tests. Sun Jung-in has the latest.
An executive committee of Volkswagen's supervisory board called an emergency meeting on Wednesday to announce that its CEO had resigned amid the biggest scandal in the company's 78-year history.
Martin Winterkorn has offered to step down from his post as CEO. The supervisory board has accepted this decision with great respect for Winterkorn.
The committee stated that Winterkorn had no knowledge of the manipulation of emissions. Senior members of the board in a separate statement said an internal investigation would eventually identify the people responsible. In a busy day of developments, an opposition party in Germany claimed the German government was aware that Volkswagen was using test rigging software but let it go on. Germany's Transport Ministry has denied the Green Party's claims. After losing more than a third of its market value during the first 2 days of the trading week, Volkswagen shares finished up 5.19% on Wednesday. But as Volkswagen finds itself in an ever-expanding web of legal challenges around the world, in addition to a criminal probe in the US, there isn't much light at the end of the tunnel for the world's biggest automaker. Sun Jung-in, Arirang News.
Tens of thousands of people in Japan have once again taken to the streets to voice their anger at recently passed security bills that allow the country's military to take part in overseas conflicts, along with demonstrators against the government's nuclear policy to reopen the nation's nuclear power plants. Organisers estimate some 25,000 people gathered at Yoyogi Park in Tokyo on Wednesday. Nobel Prize laureate Kenzaburo Oe, who was among the protesters, said the country was at its most dangerous point after 70 years of post-war peace and asked the participants to keep resisting the changes. 1 in 5 executives at Korea's 10 biggest business groups has resigned in the past year. According to conglomerate tracker Chaebol.com, there were just over 2,500 registered and unregistered executives at key affiliates of the country's 10 largest conglomerates in June. That's down 47 from 2014. In the past year, nearly 470 executives have resigned from companies such as Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor and SK Innovation, and 420 have replaced them. Compared to last year's half-year report, the retirement rate for executives is just over 18%, with the average age of retirees being just over 55. A new report has found that women in Seoul spend over 4 times longer on housework than men do on an average day. According to a report released by Seoul Statistics, women spend over 3 hours a day on housework, while men do slightly more than 40 minutes. Men are gradually starting to cook more, but it's still pretty low. Daily food preparation time for men and boys over the age of 10 jumped from a mere 5 minutes in 2004 to 8 minutes last year. The corresponding figure for women edged up by 1 minute to 71 minutes a day over the same period. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.